I'm going to try to keep it as concise as I can, but we're going to learn this week how to get everything, all of our, there's the end, all of our files. Let's wait for Ann to come in. We're going to wait this week. What we're going to do lecture wise is learn how to get all of our files basically from camera to computer and then into Lightroom and then out of Lightroom and then into up to Flickr. And I mean, this is kind of the foundation of the class as far as how I have to see things to grade them. It has to be done kind of a specific way because I have to be able to see your settings on Flickr, and this is the way to do it. So the first thing is, does anybody have any questions about anything up to this point or anything they need to bring up? Any issues? Okay. All right. So the first thing is we have to use the correct software. And there are other softwares besides Lightroom. There's Affinity Photo, there's Capture One, there's other stuff. But for this class, for the purpose of this class, I use Adobe Lightroom because it comes with Photoshop. So the first thing I want to show you on this before we even get started is I'm going to share a screen here. First, let me open up my browser before I do this and give you an idea of what I'm talking about with Lightroom. All right. Because a lot of students tend to ask this question several times. I'm going to go to adobe.com and now I'm going to share screen just so you know this is what you need. Share screen and boom. Okay, so I'm on adobe.com here and see all plans. Okay, so what you need is the photography plan, which is oddly enough less expensive than the Photoshop plan, but it comes with Photoshop, which is kind of strange. There might be a couple other apps that this comes with, but this is what you need right here is this photography, 1 terabyte. You really don't need that terabyte of storage. There might be another way to get it cheaper without the terabyte of storage. And also you can get oh, that's just for Adobe stock. Sometimes they will give you free trials. So let's compare photography plans. So literally you could just get this Lightroom plan. Okay. Like all I did there was I clicked on compare photography plans. And there's this Lightroom plan that just comes with Lightroom. We don't want the mobile version. Oh, this doesn't come with classic either, though. That's a problem. So you are going to have to get the photography plan because the Lightroom plan doesn't come with just the Lightroom plan does not come with Lightroom Classic, apparently. I don't know why. It's a little more powerful of a program, might be why. This Lightroom for mobile is not what we want. And a lot of people make the mistake of taking this. So let me just show you how you can see the difference because it's kind of confusing, right? So if you go to the photography plan and you say, let's just go to that, and then I say select, it tells you what it comes with right here in this chart. And it says Lightroom, Lightroom Classic, Photoshop, Photoshop Express, and Firefly, which I don't even really know what that is and use it. But the difference here is Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. We have to use Lightroom Classic. The mobile version is more for just mobile applications, and it's a lot more dumbed down, automated, and it doesn't work for this class for handling raw files. So it has to be Lightroom Classic. Okay, that's the big deal there. So you have to have that. Hopefully you already have this. If not, that's okay too. Just you have to get it at least for the class period, the class time, and school has it as well. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% on that, but that's one issue that you have to have Lightroom. So does everybody understand that? Like it has to be Lightroom Classic. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is show you just my desktop. Okay, really quickly. Oops, not that though. And this, I know, I'm going to really try not to mess these up too much and bore you with a bunch of mistakes on screen sharing. So let me just clear my desktop, share screen again. So this is my desktop. Okay. And you can see stuff here. And at the bottom, what I have is my dock. Okay. And in my dock, I have Lightroom Classic. It'll say it right there too. Adobe Lightroom Classic. It'll say it in the description of the app, and right there. And on a PC, obviously you don't have a dock, but you have like a start menu. It'll have the same thing. Okay. So it has to be Lightroom Classic. All right. So from there, what I'm going to do today is I just took some photos like in the photo studio at school. So it's not really specific photos, but it's 27 photos, and we're gonna pretend like I'm shooting an assignment. So you're basically going to see from beginning to end, and I'm going to also explain why this is important. I'm not doing this just to make it a tedious process for you, just for the sake of making people suffer. It's mainly, the idea here is we shoot in RAW, right? And we've already talked about that a little bit, but we shoot in RAW. We don't shoot in JPEG. And there's a big reason for that. And I'm going to show that to you in editing, mainly because of the depth that you get in the images and the editing leeway that you get in the image itself. So we shoot in RAW, and when we import into Lightroom, then we export them out as JPEGs. And when we export them out as JPEGs, they become JPEGs, obviously, and then they can be uploaded to Flickr quite easily. And especially with this folder structure that I'm about to show you, that I would highly, highly recommend. And it's up to you to use it. I mean, you can be organized or disorganized in your handling your files. That's kind of on you. This is just an easy way to keep things organized. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do before I even open Lightroom is just kind of show you how I start this out. And I would suggest, again, this is being recorded too. So if you need to watch this again, it will be up on YouTube. I have to put week 2 up. I'm going to put this up with week 2 tonight after this lecture. So let me start by sharing my desktop again. All right. And on my desktop, you see all these folders. Generally, I don't have this many folders cluttered on here. I need to get a lot of this stuff off of here. But the first thing I want to show you is I have a folder that I created called Art 2265. All right, that's the class we're in. Okay, I would highly suggest creating that folder either on your desktop, but I would even more so suggest creating it on your external drive. And this is where you should work off of and store all of your photography, all your photos. And inside of this Art 2265 folder, I have most of the assignments. I'm missing a few, but what I want you to see here is that you can go through the grades in eLearn, or the syllabus, and you can see all of our assignments, and you can create these. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take this one out, and I'll put it here for now because it doesn't belong in there. All right. So what I have right here are our assignments. So on the root folder is Art 2265. Inside of that are all of our assignments. Okay. That's these folders, and these are root folders as well. And today what I'm going to pretend that I did is shoot self-portrait. Okay. Just for argument's sake, we're going to call this self-portrait so that you can see how I do this out of a DSLR. Stop me at any time if you have a question. You'll have to verbally stop because I can't see a hand up right now because I can't see Zoom. So just verbally stop me if you have a question. So you have to create assignment folders. And within each assignment folder, this is where it gets very imperative that you kind of follow this structure here. Inside of this assignment folder, you create folders, 3 folders as well. The first folder you create is called RAW. RAW. That's where you're going to store your raw files from your SD card. That way they stay saved. They stay there for as long as you need them there, 10, 20 years, whatever it is, that you can come back and edit them anytime you want. They're in that raw folder. Okay. There's nothing in it yet. I just created the folder. The second folder you want to create is called LRCAT. That folder, LRCAT, stands for Lightroom Catalog. Okay, that's where you're going to store the Lightroom catalog. And it's very important that that is stored within the self-portrait folder with the raw folder as well. It can't be just LRCAT out here. It has to be inside of this self-portrait folder. Okay. The next folder you're going to create, and this is the last root folder is edits. Okay. And that's what's going to come out of Lightroom. Okay. But inside of this folder, edits, you want to create working and selects. Okay. So what that does is now you have your working shots and your selects shots inside of your edits folder once you're done exporting from Lightroom. And what that means is it's very, very easy to upload to Lightroom now, or upload to Flickr now, because what I'll do once I have these done is I will have working, and then I'm going to pick my 10 favorites out of working and put them in selects. And then when I go to Flickr to upload, all I'm going to do is go to my working folder and pick those 30 photos and shift select them all and upload them to Flickr. And the same with selects, it's only going to be 10, but I'm going to go into this folder and I'm going to shift select and upload those 10 photos from selects. So you have to have inside edits, working, and selects. Okay, that's the folders you need to create. So obviously Art 2265, that's your class. Then inside of that, you could create all your assignments, or you can just do them as you do the assignments. It's up to you, but either way. But I just created self-portrait. And inside self-portrait, I have edits with working and selects inside of it, Lightroom catalog, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and raw files. Okay. So now that I have that folder structure properly created, it makes everything a lot easier just to put it in place. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is we just did our photo shoot. Just pretend like you took 30. I took like 27. And I'm going to tell you, if you have 28 or 27 or 33 in your working, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to take a point off if you only have 27 photos or 26. Okay. If you only have 10 or 15, yeah, I might take a point off. But generally what I want is about 30 photos. I'd love to see 30 or more every week. But if a couple of weeks, if you have 28, it's not the end of the world. All right. What you have to have is you have to have 10 selects. You have to have those 10 selects because I grade those 10 selects out of 10. So if you only give me 9 selects, I can only give you a 9 out of 10 at most because there were only 9 photos. If you only give me 6, I can only give you a 6 out of 10 at most because there are only 6 photos. So you have to have 10 selects. Okay. Those are what I grade. All right. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So we shot our 30 photos. All right. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking this card out of my camera, just like this, and I have it in my hand here. And then most computers don't have an SD card reader. So I have my handy SD card reader here. I put my SD card into my SD card reader. Okay. And I'm going to plug it into my computer. What I'm going to do first is share desktop again so you can see it. All right. So we're going to share screen. I'm going to go back to my desktop right here and hit share. And then I'm going to close this folder. And this is always a little more challenging on Zoom because of the way it handles Windows. But you're going to see when I plug this in, okay, that you're going to see a SD card icon pop up on my desktop. Okay. And this will happen for you too. If you're on a PC, you might have to go in and find it, which is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it's there. So you have to find this. So you see this icon, this SD card just popped up. If I double click this, I will see in digital capture image, whatever that stands for, DCIM. I should know that, but I don't. But inside of that is your raw files. And these are raw. They're not JPEG extensions. You always got to look after the dot and you see the extension of the file. These are raw files, and that stands for raw adjusted Fuji or something like that. But here's what I want you to know. All camera companies have a different extension for their RAWs. Nikon is like .nef. It might have changed, but that's what it was 10 years ago. Canon has CR2 or CR3 or something like that. It doesn't matter because we're going to convert these to JPEGs. But you have to know when you look I'm looking again. I'm going to unclick this and just show you one more time. I'm looking at my SD card and I'm looking for these raw photos. And here they are. Here's the 30 that I shot. Okay. So now what I do is I have to go into my my Art 2265 folder, okay? And I have to copy them to my raw folder in self-portrait. So I'm opening up this window. Hopefully you can see that second window there. And I'm going to self-portrait and I'm going to go into, I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to go into raw. I'm going to double click that. So I'm now in my self-portrait raw folder. I make sure I'm in self-portrait, and in my raw folder, I'm going to move this over here, and then I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to select my first raw file and hold down Shift key and select them all. Okay. And then I'm going to drag and drop them into my raw folder. So now you see them copying into my raw folder. Okay. These are all the raw files that I photographed. Okay. So it only takes a little bit of time depending on how fast your computer is. I'm going to shut down my SD card and I'm going to drag and drop it and eject it because I don't need it anymore. It's done. So now I have all my photos in RAW, in my RAW folder. They're right there in self-portrait RAW. All right. So that's a big first step, getting those out of your camera onto your computer and into your RAW folder. Now, what I'm going to do is start Lightroom. Okay. And it has to be Lightroom Classic. It can't be Lightroom because Lightroom is just mobile. It has to be Lightroom Classic. I'm going to start Lightroom. All right. And I'm going to use the default catalog for now, which is, yes, use this newer upgraded catalog. That's fine. I'm just going to use the default catalog. It does not matter because I'm going to start a new catalog. Okay. And what I'm going to do here, and hopefully my default catalog is not full of just weirdness and everything, but it shouldn't be. It should be okay. So the first thing I'm going to do now is say file new catalog. Okay. And that's the first thing you should do every time is say file new catalog. And I'm going to call it self-portrait. This is how you stay organized. I'm going to call the catalog self-portrait. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. But this is how the first thing you do as soon as you open Lightroom and you're ready to start a new catalog, you call it self-portrait because that's what you're doing is self-portrait. And you have to make sure, because sometimes this will take you off of where you're at. You have to make sure it's in your Art 2265 folder, inside self-portrait, inside your Lightroom catalog folder. So you create this new catalog inside of your Lightroom catalog folder and say create. And boom, it's going to create. And then I'm just going to say backup and then boom. Okay, what happened there is I'm going to stop share for a second so I can slow down there. Well, I don't really need to stop share, but again, interrupt me if you think I'm going too fast. But what happened there is Lightroom shut down and started over again with the self-portrait Lightroom catalog. Okay, now we're in the right catalog. So I am going to stop share. So I want to show you where that is created just so you understand this. So I didn't really need to stop share, but I want to go to desktop and make sure I'm there and not just in Lightroom. So I'm going to minimize Lightroom and I'm going to go to my Art 2265 folder. All right. And if I double click that, and now that I go into my Lightroom catalog folder, there's actually a folder now that Lightroom created called self-portrait. And inside of that is my Lightroom catalog for self-portrait. So I can technically double click on this blue icon right here to get to it, or I can just, if I have Lightroom open, I can do it. But the best way to get to that folder is just to double click on the icon. I already have Lightroom open. So I'm going to go back to Lightroom Classic. And if you see right now, it's blank because I have not imported any photos into my Lightroom catalog yet. Okay. Now you have to have individual catalogs for each shoot that you do. If not, you'll just have a default catalog full of thousands of photos and it'll be a mess. This is what keeps these shoots tagged to the proper catalog so that you can go back and edit anytime you want. All right. So the next thing now is to go up to File again and say, I know it says click the import button to begin. I can do it right there. And you're more than welcome to do it right there. I like to go to File, Import, photos and video right here. Why? Well, because this sometimes automates things a little more than I like. And this does it this way. So what it's doing now is saying no photos found. And I'm going to go to my Mac hard drive and I'm going to go to, I was on my phone because I have my phone hooked up, but I'm not looking at my phone photos. I'm looking at my Mac hard drive because that's where they're at. So I'm going to go to users, and this becomes kind of, this can be kind of challenging, but I know where they're at on my Mac. They're under users, my name, Gregory Holston, desktop, because they're just on my desktop. And then when I go to Art 2265, okay, that's the folder that I created for my class. And then I could say include subfolders here, but I'm just going to go to self-portrait, and then I'm going to go to raw. Okay, and that's where they are. There's where my raw files are. That's what I'm importing into Lightroom. Okay, those raw files that I shot today. Okay, and again, they're not self-portrait, they're just raw files that I shot just for the sake of this demonstration. So now that they're all in, you want to make sure that they're all checked. I mean, don't accidentally uncheck one. Keep them all checked, keep them all there. And then just hit the import button. Hopefully you can all see this. I'm going to do one thing just to make sure. I'm going to share screen again. I'm going to go just to Lightroom Classic. So just to make sure that you're seeing this window. But I'm sure you could with the desktop. Let me look at Zoom really quickly and make sure nobody raised their hand. I think we're good, right? All right. So now I have to import these. I've already picked the folder. Okay. I've already picked a folder, which is this raw folder in my self-portrait category. I don't know why my window is spinning. Hopefully I don't crash. And I'm going to click import. Okay, I'm going to have to stop share for a minute and see what's going on here with this. Okay. Yeah, because my window is just spinning. Yeah, you guys are all still there. Good. It's just odd that my window is spinning. I'm gonna stop Lightroom for a second and redo it because this is a little bit odd. It shouldn't be doing that. Not responding. Yeah, Lightroom's not responding. It's probably because Zoom has interfered with it. It's no big deal. That's the good thing about Lightroom is that it's still got that catalog saved. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to share screen. I'm going to go to desktop. Okay. And an error occurred. Don't send. Yeah, that's okay. So I'm going to go to desktop, and I'm going to go once again just into my Lightroom catalog, and I'm going to open up self-portrait Lightroom catalog. And hopefully I don't really need, as long as you can, I think you can see this. I'm going to just make sure you can see this. Like I'm sure you can. You can see the light. Just say yes or no if you can see the Lightroom window there.
I see it.
Good, thank you. Appreciate it. Just want to make sure. All right, so click the import button to begin. Okay, same idea. Going here to Macintosh hard drive users, and then Gregory Holston. Okay, and then desktop. Okay, and this where it becomes kind of a problem, sort of a little hunt. And then you go to self-portrait, and then you go to your raw folder. And then right here, like I said, don't leave them checked, or don't leave them unchecked, leave them checked. And then you hit import. And now what it's doing is you'll see a little progress bar up here, and it's importing those photos. Okay. It's just importing, and it's done. It made a little sound, and it's finished. It's imported the 27 photos I took. Okay. So now the beauty of this is we have them all in a layout down here at the bottom, which is the way you want to edit multiple photos. Why I said before, like Photoshop is only like good for like 1 or 2 photos, or interlayering 2 or 3 photos maybe, but Lightroom is good for editing multiple photos. Now I want to draw your attention to up here, library, develop, map, book, slideshow, print, web. The only 2 that we're going to use, and honestly, the only 2 that I ever use, are library and develop. You can basically ignore the rest of these. These are like if you want to put a book together, if you want to make a print. I wouldn't even print out a Lightroom. I would print out a Photoshop. But library and develop. So the difference between library and develop is library is just showing you the images. It's more just a browser. You can kind of look at them. You can kind of do a little bit of editing, like a little bit of tone control. Like you can bring up the exposure a little bit. I don't know what's going on, why there's such hesitation there with my Lightroom right now. But there it just worked. I don't know why that took so long. It should happen and yeah, something's going on where my Mac is thinking about something it shouldn't be. I don't know. But the point is, library is not really where you want to edit your images. Okay. Lightroom is more for just, or I mean, library is more for just organizing the stuff a little bit and looking. And maybe you say, oh, I don't like this one, which is perfectly fine. For this class, I want you to keep even the ones that you don't like because I want to see them to see where you're making mistakes. Like this one was a mistake in exposure, which is okay. I did that intentionally just so you could see. I want you to keep those for the sake of this class, just so I can see how your exposures are going. And what, like this is a good exposure and this is a not so good exposure. And I want to be able to see that. So I don't want you getting rid of photos right now. But if later on you say you took 40 and you do want to get rid of 10 because they're just terrible, all you have to do is hit the delete key and Lightroom will ask you, do you want to remove that from Lightroom? Which means the raw will stay where it's at, or do you want to delete the whole thing from disk? And most of the time, if it's really bad, I will just delete it from disk because like this, I would never use this. So I would delete it from disk. Hopefully that makes sense. But right now I have them in library, not to go off too much on that, but library does not give you editing powers. And then when you go to develop, okay, when you flip over here, and that was kind of slow, and I don't know what that yellow screen was. It was kind of rendering it for my camera in Lightroom. But now that you go to develop, you have all these settings over here, right? You have a lot of settings. You can change it to, black and white. You can change it to, you can change the clarity, the saturation, vignetting. You can do like vignetting, which is this kind of thing, which is kind of kitschy. I don't really use it. You can add grain if you want, make it look like film. There's a lot of stuff in Lightroom, and I'm not teaching Lightroom editing right now. I'm just teaching the import export process. But I will say, if you stay up top here with the white balance, which is just the color of the light temperature, and you can adjust that if you want. If it's really yellow, you can bring it down. Blue is the opposite of yellow and light, or magenta or green. You can adjust those things, okay? And also you can just hit auto on white balance, and it's a lot of times it'll give you that. I like to a lot of times use white balance as shot, as long as you're white, and see that looks pretty good. The reason I like that is because that's the way it looks in camera, and that's pretty good white balance. Okay, not to get too far into white balance, but then you have exposure, which is very important. Okay, but right now, I don't want you doing a lot of this editing because I want to see what you're doing with your images straight out of the camera right now, okay, for the first couple of weeks. But you can do things like highlights and shadows. If you come in here, this is a highlight, the white of the clock. This will bring the highlights up. It'll only bring up the brighter areas of the scene. So there's a lot you can do there. If I zoom out, you can see highlight. It doesn't affect everything. You can see it affecting everything a little bit, but it affects more the bright areas of the scene. Like if I bring the highlights way down, you might start to be able to see detail in here. Let's go to here, and highlights up, we'll get rid of that. See, so highlights is really going to affect the highlight area of the scene, and the same with shadows. So like, yeah, I might bring that down because I want to see the highlight area, right? And then shadows is the same thing, but in the darker areas, what shadows will do is sort of make the shadows, the darker areas darker or lighter, depending on how you slide it. So highlights and shadows is very important. Exposure is more of just an overall, okay? So those are things you can play with a little bit. I would stay away from texture and clarity. A lot of people have bad habit of overusing those, and it makes it look really kind of fake. So, I mean, that's kind of up to you, but for right now, we're not diving too deep into the editing process, but definitely exposure and highlights and shadows, whites and blacks, which is kind of the same thing in a different way, but I would just deal with highlights and shadows and not play too much with whites and blacks. We're dealing right now with just import and export, but I want to show you something about a raw file and why it's important to shoot in raw. And I'm going to go to this one right here. So this one was really underexposed, okay? And it's really underexposed. But the beauty of shooting in RAW is you can get that back, right? Look at how much detail I just brought back from a really underexposed photo because I shot in RAW. Now, if I would have shot that in JPEG, I would never have been able to get that much detail back. It wouldn't have looked like that. The white area would start to fall apart, especially right in here. It would start to look really digitized and really bad. But because I shot in RAW, I have a lot more leeway to edit my images. And that's why professionals, for the most part, will shoot in RAW, especially on very important things. You can shoot in JPEG, but you better get your exposure spot on because you don't have a lot of leeway to change it afterwards. You have some, but not nearly as much as you have in RAW. So I'm going to leave that one like that. And let's try to do it here and see if we get anything. Yeah, see, I mean, you start to get it here too, but I want to show you this too, because this was so underexposed when I brought it up all the way, it gets really noisy, right? Because it was a bad exposure. It was too underexposed. So it's going to get really noisy. But if I really wanted to save this photo, if this is the only one I had, I would do my best to try to keep it. I might add a little clarity to it, not much because I don't like clarity. I would probably add contrast because I like that better than clarity. But there's a lot you can do here with Lightroom. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to get you what you want. Where is contrast right off the bat? It might be hidden right now. The tone curve does it as well. You can create contrast this way. Okay, that's called an S curve. There's a lot you can do. So what I want you to do when you have Lightroom is feel free to play around and edit. Okay, I'm not telling you not to edit. You can edit. You just need to be, I want to see some of your images straight out of camera at first. I'm not going to tell you to stay away from editing. I see somebody said something in the chat. And Marilyn says, do we need 10 selects for the self-portrait project or just the final one? You need 10 selects for every project, except for 2. You need 10 selects for every assignment. All right. So I'll show you what that looks like on Flickr. You need 30 working and 10 selects for every project. You shoot 30 and you pick your best 10 that I grade. All right. So now that we have these 30, I'll edit one more. I'll bring this one up a little bit because it was underexposed. I'll bring it up to that, right? And then maybe I'll bring my highlights down a little bit. See, so I can bring my exposure up and then bring my highlights down and kind of get a decent image out of this, right? Even though it's not really well composed or anything like that. But that's what Lightroom does. This is a much more streamlined way of editing images, okay? So, I could go through these and do this with all of them. But like I said, when I see your first roll of film, or not roll of film, your first set of 30 images, I sort of want to see it like this because I want to know where your mistakes are being made and why you're underexposing, and I'll be able to see that. All right. So that is the import process in Lightroom. It's that simple. The main thing is creating that folder structure in the beginning. Art 2265, self-portrait, inside self-portrait, edits, working, selects, and then Lightroom catalog and RAW. All right. That's the main thing. You have to have that. And I'm going to go back to desktop just to show that to you one more time, even though I know it might annoy you a little bit. I'm a little bit repetitious sometimes, but I want to make sure you know. But in this Lightroom folder, hopefully it's sharing that. You have self-portrait, then you have edits, selects and working inside of edits, Lightroom catalog, where everything goes, and then your raw files. It will always be nestled there. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quit Lightroom. And I'm going to show you why this is handy as well. Is I'm on my desktop now. And if I want to go back into Lightroom and edit, let's say just for example, I wanted to, just to kind of throw this off a little bit, I wanted to edit these perspective. And I go into here. The good thing about Lightroom is if I click another catalog, it will show that catalog. Okay, it will show those images. So this was one I used for samples for perspective that weren't really perspective, but it was just for a previous class. But why I'm showing you this is because of how I got there. I just clicked on the Lightroom catalog in perspective, okay? And I'm gonna shut down Lightroom again, and I'm gonna show you again what I mean by that. So I'm gonna quit Lightroom, back up the catalog, and then I'm gonna close this window out. And if I just open Lightroom, it's always gonna open to the last catalog that you are working in, okay? That's kind of my point here. It's just going to reopen to that perspective catalog, but that's not the one we're working on. But I wanted to show you that this is why Lightroom is so powerful. So if I quit Lightroom again and I don't want to work on the perspective, I go back into my folder here in Art 2265 and I go into my self-portrait catalog and I go into Lightroom catalog and I click on the self-portrait, the blue icon, self-portrait Lightroom catalog. It will open that catalog back up to where we were. And it keeps track of all the things I did, like you see here, right? It keeps track. It remembers what you did in your edits, okay? So that's very important. All right, so now what do? Now we have to make them into JPEGs. These are all raw files that I'm editing right now, and I don't want them raw files. Not only do I need to make them JPEGs, I need to rename them, all right? Because honestly, this is a big problem with a lot of students and a lot of people in general, is that they have all their photos and they have them, they're all named DCSC F0005. Nobody wants a file named that. It's not good, right? It's not a good file naming structure. So Lightroom is going to help us to name our files and make them into JPEGs. It's the whole reason we're doing this, besides the fact that you can edit them, right? So now that we've imported them, we're going to pretend that I've done everything I wanted to do to these. So I'm going to go back from develop, back to library, and I'm going to zoom out. I just double clicked and I'm going to zoom out. And the first thing I need to do is hold down the shift key and make sure they're all selected. Okay, now they're all bright. They're all selected. That's only 2 is selected. Number 2, here only number 13 is selected. You have to have them all selected when you're ready to export. All right, so again, I click 1 and then I go to 27. I hold down the shift key. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to come up here and say edit and then go select all. That's another way to do it. It will select them all. So now we're ready to export them as JPEGs. We're going to pretend again that I had 30. And like I said, I don't care if it's 27 or 30 or 33. It should be somewhere. I don't like really less than 25, but 25 to 35 is fine. Okay. Just don't worry about, don't get hung up on that too much. Okay. So now I'm ready to export them. And this is where you're going to maybe have to watch the video again to make sure that you understand how to select all the right boxes for this. So how to export. I'm in Lightroom. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and just stop share and just share Lightroom just so this becomes a little more, yeah, it's just covering Lightroom now and not my desktop. I'm in Lightroom, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say file export, and hopefully you can see that. I'm going to make this bigger. I don't know what this maximize. I want a full screen right there. Yeah. So now I'm in full screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Export. Okay. It's the top one, Export. Hopefully everyone sees that. File, Export. Okay. I'm going to click that, and then it's going to say, hopefully this is still, yeah, this is still sharing. Zoom throws me off sometimes what windows it shares. So now it's saying export 27 files, okay? And that's how many I have. Here you have to choose. You have to make sure that it's in the correct folder, okay? So I know I just went to that, but you want to make sure it says export to specific folder. And then you're going to choose the folder. And I already have it set up, but let's just say it's somewhere else. You have to find it. You have to go to Art 2265, Self-Portrait. Where are we exporting to? I'm going to go, I want to export to working, okay? Because this is where our 30 working images are going to go. And I'm going to choose working, and that's where I want them to go. Now I know that they're going to the correct place, okay? You don't have to worry about subfolders, existing files. Just say ask what to do or skip. I would just say ask what to do. All right, now you want to rename them. Okay. And I already have it set up because from last class, but I want to rename them self-portrait. And what's going to happen is I want to name them custom name in a sequence. Because what's going to happen with a sequence as opposed to custom name, it's just going to be self-portrait JPEG. I don't want that. I want custom name in a sequence where it'll say self-portrait 1, self-portrait 2, self-portrait 3, all the way to 27 in a sequence. And I have self-portrait is what I want them to name. You could call them John, right? Or whatever. And it will do John 1, John 2, John 3. But I want them called self-portrait because that's what they are. And that's what the assignment is. And it just makes it easier to find them later. Self-portrait 1 is fine. And then it starts at 1. It will end at the last one, which is 27. Okay. So video, you just keep that closed. We're not doing anything with video. All right. And then file settings, yes, they have to be in JPEG, not JPEG XL, none of this other stuff. Photoshop documents, TIFF. Keep it in JPEG for your image format. Quality should be 100. Okay, don't limit the file size. Quality should be 100. Color space sRGB is fine. Don't mess with that. It doesn't need to be your display or Adobe RGB or any of that. Keep it at sRGB. Don't click HDR output. Just keep that unchecked. All right, so now we need to resize the fit. And here I made a mistake in the last class. What you want to do here is think in horizontal terms. Does anyone know what the optimal print resolution is for an image? Anybody? What is a good print resolution for an image? 300 DPI. 300 right there. 300 DPI or PPI, right? So internet takes 72 DPI, but we want to make these JPEGs at 300 DPI because we still want these JPEGs to be high resolution and usable for print if we need that. The good thing is when we upload to Flickr, Flickr will downsize them to 72 DPI for us. So we keep them at 300 DPI and we want the width to be 12 and the height to be 8. Width 12, height 8. What I mean by that is the width will be 12 inches. Okay, and any of these, I'm not going to close this window out, but any of these horizontal images, the width will be 12 inches, the height will be 8 inches at 300 dots per inch, which means it's a pretty high res photo. All right, so this is very important, width and height. Okay, width and height. You can also just do, you could say long edge is 12. This is probably even a better way to do it. Oops, I accidentally exported. I'm going to stop that. I hit enter there and it sent me. A lot of things will trip you up like that. I don't like that it just starts like that. So what I'm going to do there is make sure that it didn't, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to worry about it. It probably might have started to export one. No big deal. We're going to go back into file, export. Yeah, that's a problem. My problem. I made that mistake though. So make sure again, it's in working. Everything is still good here. It is. Self-portrait's working. Custom name sequence, self-portrait starting at 1. JPEG. You can do long edge of 12, which is perfectly fine. Or you can do it in megapixels if you want percentage. I would either do it in width and height or long edge or short edge. You could do short edge at 8. All that means is it's going to tell it's asking if I say short edge, it will just make the short edge 8 and it'll make the long edge whatever it is, depending on the ratio of the photo. I mean, I know that's probably throwing some of you off, but let's just go back to width and height and keep it at width 12 and height 8 for now. Okay. At any thing you think about, it should be bigger, like 12 by 8. I would probably suggest 12 by 8. Width is your longer edge and height is your shorter edge because it thinks in terms of a horizontal photo. If it's a vertical, it'll just flip that on its own. So you don't have to worry about that. 300 pixels per inch, very important there. Make sure that's 300. Okay. All right. And then here you have to, and this is very important, include all the metadata. Because when you upload to Flickr, it will have your camera settings that I can look at when you're uploading. And now if you want, and I have them checked, you can remove the person info, you can remove the location info. You're not going to get that in a DSLR most of the time anyway, because they're not connected to the internet. This is like if you were working with phone photos or stuff like that, but go ahead and click those if you want to make sure that's not in there. All I care about is the camera raw info, which is going to be in all metadata. So make sure all metadata is selected here, and you can remove person or remove location if you want to. That's fine. Watermarking, we just avoid. All that is a way to kind of put a copyright watermark on it. We don't really care about that right now. And then post-processing, just say show in Finder. And that's it. That's what you want out of this menu system. The biggest thing that's probably going to trip you up is your image size. You have to make sure that your image size is 300 DPI, that your width and height are set appropriately. Okay, so now I'm just going to say export, and it's going to export 27 files. And where it's exporting them is into my working folder. All right, it's into self-portrait working folder, and it takes a minute. You can see it kind of counting up here. Don't, like when it's doing this, don't just walk away if you don't want to sit there and watch it, but don't start surfing the internet and doing a bunch of other stuff, because it might throw things off. I've just seen that happen. Lightroom can be a little bit, picky. You've already seen that. If you open other windows and close windows, I would leave it right here and just let it finish its process. You just got to be a little patient. If you have a slower computer, it's going to take a little longer. I mean, my computer is relatively fast, but it's going to take a little time. What is it doing right now? It is basically converting all of those raw files into JPEGs and renaming them and putting them into the working folder. And I'm going to show that to you when it's done. It's going to make a chime when it's done to say it's finished, and it's going to actually show me the folder. All right, so here it's about finished. We'll just give it a couple more seconds here, and then we'll be good. But yeah, this is just one of those things, you got to be patient on this and let it do its thing. If you want to stop it, you click X. I wouldn't suggest doing that unless like I wanted to stop it right away. So now that I have, it just made a chime, and then it said the screen is sharing is paused. I'm going to stop share and reshare. What it did there is it went to this in my Finder and showed me this folder. Okay. And it showed me that it's now copied, and I'm going to go ahead and stop share again. I'm going to close this folder out. And I'm going to show you just on my desktop as opposed to just that folder, which is it's a Zoom thing. I'm going just to my desktop. And then what it did was it opened up this folder in Art 2265. And then inside of self-portrait, you're going to see now inside of edits working, it has all of those photos, and it exported them as self-portrait 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way, obviously. And it also has my edits. Let's go to the one of the photo that I really brought up. Well, there's one that I really brought up that was dark, right? So it's got them in their edited form, okay, like that one, okay? And then they're all in there. Okay, this is a big deal because this makes uploading to Lightroom very easy. So from this moment forward, I'm going to redo this because I'm going to re-emphasize this because who was Marilyn asked, do we need 30 and 10? Yes. For every assignment, I'm going to show you on Flickr really quickly. For every assignment, you need 30 working and 10 selects. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share screen and show you Flickr. Okay. I'm going to get through this as quickly as possible, but I'm going to go to Flickr and I'm going to show you a student who's done this in the past, who did this last year. Okay, so I kind of always default go to Mahir, and oops, I typed his name wrong, Mahir, and then you go to Mahir and I look at his albums. This is what I need to see as an instructor, is he has self-portrait select 10 photos on Flickr, and he has self-portrait working 30 photos on Flickr, and he has that for every assignment except for 2. Okay, and I'll give you plenty of warning before, but the 2 assignments that are not, it doesn't really matter. One is portrait lighting and one is depth of field. But for every other assignment, perspective, 10, 30 working, and here he has 31. Like I said, I don't care if it's off a little bit. 10 selects, For emphasize color, 30 working, 10 selects. For creative motion, 30 working, 10 selects. Depth of field, he only has 4 because for that assignment, you only need 4. Shadow play, 30 working, 10 select, and on and on. I know I'm being repetitious. Backlighting working, backlighting selects, 30, 10. The doll, 30, 10. Into the night, 30, 10. Okay. That or 30, 10. I'm sorry. Well, here he's only got the 10. He must have gotten rid of his 30. No big deal. But that's how you do it. Okay. 30 and 10, 30 and 10, 30 and 10 for every assignment except for depth of field and portrait lighting, which I'll explain when we get to those. Okay. So for self-portrait, you need to have 30 working and 10 selects. So how do I get my 10 selects now? Right? This is why this process makes this easy. Because now all I have to do is I'm going to share screen again. But first, I'm going to get a little pen and a little piece of paper, okay, a little pad and a pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pens out of here real quick. And I'm going to have a little notebook. This one's probably got a little note. I'm going to have my little notebook. So you got to just picture me with this. And we're going to go and I'm going to close our browser real quick. And we're going to go back to my desktop. And I'm going to show you how easy this is. You just go into Art 2265 and then you go into working. And I know it's kind of hard to see, but you can go through it this way. This is what I would suggest because hopefully by this point, you're already pretty familiar with the photos you like, okay? You should always keep in the back of your mind which ones you like and which one, that's always just part of the process. But now you just go through and you go, okay, now I'm going to pick my best 10. And now for this sake, none of these are great. I just did these, kind of haphazardly at school today, right? In the 10 minutes before class, but I'm just going to pick 10 that I like. And I'm going to start with 1. And this is why the naming is so good. Now they're 1 through 27. Self-portrait 1. I don't have to write self-portrait 1. I can just write, I'm going to pick 1. I'm going to pick, let's see. I'm going to go to 5. Okay. And I'm going to go 7 because I like that one. I'm going to go 8. And I've got 4 so far. Then I'm going to go, I'll go 12. Okay. And you see what I'm doing here. I'm going to go 14, pretend like that was good. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to go 18. That's 7. Then I'm going to go 19. That's 8. Then I'm going to go with 21. And then I got one more. I'm going to pick that one, 23. So all I did there, I know I'm being probably a little bit over the top here with explaining things, is I wrote those down. Okay, 1, 5, 7, 8, 12, 14, 18, 19, 21, 23. I wrote them down. I wrote down my 10 best. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to share screen and I'm going to go to my desktop again. We're going to look at this. We're going to see this folder. Hopefully you can see this folder. And what I'm going to do now that I wrote them down is I'm going to click the ones that I want. 1, and then I have to hold down Command to pick those. Okay, because if I hold down Shift, it'll select all of them under, and I don't want that. What I want to do is hold down Command. If you're on a PC, I think it's Control or whatever. It's Alt. It's probably Alt. Okay, it's probably Alt. But either way, what you got to do is hold down Command or Alt, and then I have to pick 1, 5, 7, 8, 12, 14, 18, and I'm just looking at my notepad, 19, 21, and 23. Okay. Those are the ones I want. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, now that I have those selected, is I'm going to say edit, copy those 10 items. Okay. Now that I have edit, copy those 10 items, I'm going to go into selects, and that's an empty folder, and I'm going to say edit, paste 10 items. And all that did was paste those 10 items that I copied out of, they're still in my working folder, but they're also, those 10 now are in my selects folder. Okay, and that's what I'm going to have graded. All right, so we're going to stop there for a second. I'm going to stop share. Now we're ready to upload to Flickr. All right. I'm going to do right now is at 6:55. I'm going to take a short 5-minute break, let you get up, use the restroom, whatever. And we'll come back at 7. And then I'm going to finish up by showing you how to upload to Flickr. And we're going to talk about the perspective assignment. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? We good? All right. So let's take a little 5-minute break. I'm going to pause recording and then we'll come. So now I'm just going to show you how to upload to Flickr. Flickr is not the easiest website. There's a couple little things it does that I think is kind of counter intuitive. I'm going to show you how to upload to Flickr to create 30 working in an album called Self-Portrait Working and 10 select in an album called Self-Portrait Select. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. And the reason it's easy is because of the way we've already set it up with Lightroom. It's already there. It's already ready to go. So let's get started on that. And then we'll talk a little bit about perspective and I'll let you go. All right. So first things first, let's go to Flickr and hopefully my screen sharing will work effectively. I'm going to have to, sometimes I have to stop share and reshare and all that. But the first thing I'm going to do is just open up Flickr. And I'm just doing that on my web browser right now. Now I'm going to share screen and I'm going to go to Flickr. And here we are. We're on Flickr. So let's just say, let's go to my home page here on Flickr. Okay, so let's just say you're here. Okay, and these are from last class. This is what I uploaded. I already took them down. The first thing you do when you're ready to upload to Flickr, you're ready to put your assignment up, okay? And this is very important that you follow this kind of step by step, okay? The first thing you do is well, I don't know how obvious that is, but that cloud with the up arrow in it means upload. It means you're going to upload images to Flickr. So you're going to be on your home page and you just click upload. And here it's going to come up with this window right here that says I can upload so many. You have plenty of space to upload all your photos for this class. You only have one choice here. It's this button here, and that's the button you're going to choose. Choose photos and videos to upload. Now, here's the problem with Flickr. Hopefully you can still see my window. If not, I hope you can. I don't know if you can or not. Can somebody tell me if you can see the self-portrait window right now? When I clicked upload, can you see it? Or what does it show you on the screen?
No, I can't see it.
Okay, yeah, that's Zoom. Okay, so what happened here? That's a problem. So I'm going to do this one step at a time, and this is going to be a problem because Zoom is like this. I'm going to go enter full screen mode, maybe. I'm going to go like this. Tell me now if you can see it. Probably not. Do you see the self-portrait window in my computer window? Probably not.
Yes.
You do now. You do now. Okay. Good. So what that does is it says choose photos to upload. And I always just get out of it really quickly because I want to show you how you find it. But it's going to say choose photos to upload. So then you go to Art 2265. Okay. Then you go to self-portrait. Then you go to edits. Then you go to working. And then you click on the first one and you hold down the shift key to select them all. Okay. Simple enough, right? I mean, you have to find the photos. You hold down the shift key and you select them all. Then you click upload. Now here's where Flickr can get you into trouble. Now they're ready to be uploaded. They're already uploading, as a matter of fact. But a lot of students do this, and this will get, they just automatically go up to here and say, upload 27 photos. Do not do that. Like, that's a real, like, please do not do that. Because what will happen now is if you just upload these 27 photos, they're just going to go into a photo stream. They're not going to be in an album. And I have to have them in an album just so when I'm grading 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, they're not just all stuck in a photo stream and I won't know what's what. Okay. So you don't click this. What you do, and now it's flashing, it's really begging to be clicked. Don't click it. You come over here to the left side and you click add to albums. Okay. Very important. Add to albums. And then it says add these photos to albums. Now I already have albums. I don't want to add it to an album that I've already created. Okay. I'm going to create a new album and I'm going to call it Self self-portrait, and I want all the assignments to be called the self-portrait working, not self-portrait, but I want whatever the assignment's called and working. So self-portrait working, emphasize color working, shadow play working. Okay, that's what I want. So now that I have them, I've add these photos to this album. I've created the album. I say create a new album, and then it comes to here to ask it, and this is where it gets a little bit silly to me, but you could put a description in. You don't need to. Keep going through here and just create the album. And here's what you look for: this green check mark next to self-portrait working. That's what you want them uploaded into, self-portrait working. So then I say done. It still hasn't done it yet though. Now I have to go up here and do this. Upload 27 photos. Boom. Upload 27 photos with the following changes. Yes. Public. This is very important that it's public so that I can see it. You have to see this green square and make sure that it's public. And then say upload. And then what's going to happen now is you have to sit through this for a second and let it upload. It's almost finished. And then continue to my photo stream. That's fine. What I'm going to do is go to my albums, and you're going to see self-portrait working right here. I did that a little quick, but it's right here. Self-portrait working, and all 27 of them are in there. That's my working folder, or my working album on Flickr. Okay? That's for me to look at to see what you did for that assignment. So next, now we have to do the selects. So I go here again, upload, choose photos and videos to upload. Now I'm already in self-portrait. Now I want to go to edits. I want to go to selects, and I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold that down, and I'm just going into selects, and I'm picking my top 10. And then I hit upload. And again, don't jump on this. You have to go here and say add to albums. I wish that said create an album, but it's add to albums, because you could technically add it to an old album if you had one, but I want to create a new album. Okay. And I'm going to call it self-portrait selects. Okay. And then I say create new album, and it goes to this next thing. Again, just skip that. Create new album, self-portrait selects, done, right? And then you saw that green check. I went through that a little quick, but there was a green check by self-portrait selects. And then I say upload the 10 photos. Make sure that public green square is there and say upload, and then let it do its thing. And it's only 10 photos. It'll be a little faster this time. And then yeehaw. And then continue to photo stream is fine. But now when I go to albums, now I have self-portrait working, okay? And I have self-portrait selects. And this is what I'm going to grade, 1 through 10. And another thing, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. You'll see sometimes it will say, as long as it says 10 photos here, you're good. But sometimes you might only see 8 for a minute. You might have to wait for it to finish uploading. But this is how it works. So now I have this, and this is what I would grade. All right? That's it, right? But the main thing is, what made that easy, I don't know if you're probably aware, but is that all I had to do was go to my working folder that was already on my desktop that had the working images in, and then all I had to do was go to my selects folder that was already in edits and upload them. There wasn't a lot of hunting around for everything and getting one out of this folder or one out of that folder and like crap all over the place. It just makes it really easy to find that stuff and put it right up on the internet. Not only that, but they're all JPEG, so they go straight up. They go straight up to the internet, right? It's just very seamless. It takes some time to get used to that, but if you follow those steps from Lightroom all the way to Flickr, that's the way I want it done. The other thing about that, one more thing I'm going to share screen, and then we're going to talk a little bit about perspective, and then we'll be done, is, yeah, let me just go back to Zoom really quick here and share screen. And I'm going to show once again why this is important on Flickr. And I'm going to share screen. And if I go to this one, right, and I look, it says it was shot with the Fujifilm X-S10. This is what I was using. It tells me my aperture. It tells me my angle of my lens. It tells me my shutter speed. It tells me my ISO, All that stuff is there. And it also tells me that all this other information, which you don't need to get too caught up in all this, but it shows that I shot in manual. My white balance was auto, which is perfectly fine. It shows me all this stuff. It also tells me the date I took it, which I'm going to tell you that's important too. I have a rule in this class, and I have a lot of, and it's okay. A lot of students ask, well, can I use photos that I took 5 years ago at spring break? No, right? The reason no is because I want you photographing for this class, in this class, for the specifically for the project. So the date taken thing is another important piece of that metadata. So one of the things is a lot of students, their camera date is wrong in their camera. You have to get familiar with your camera. Go through that and go into user settings and check your date and time and make sure your date and time is set in your camera correctly. It's just in, it'll be in user menu, right? User settings, date and time. Set that, make sure that's correct. Little things like that. But all that metadata I need so that and it's not I'm trying to catch anybody doing anything. It just gives me all that information so I know what's going on with the image. The other reason too, and this hasn't happened, it probably never will, and hopefully it never will, is that way you can't just drag and drop photos that somebody else took and put them on Flickr, right? Because this way it's going to tell me, when it's done and how it's shot. I've never had that problem, but it kind of is a foolproof way of stopping that as well. But mainly I have it there to see your settings in your camera so that I can see what you're maybe doing right or maybe doing wrong. And that's okay either way. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right. Okay. Well, so the next piece of this whole thing, and then we'll be done, is perspective, which is the next assignment. So self-portrait, I already said you can use your phone for self-portrait. Now, if you're using your phone, you have to upload to Flickr via the phone app, which I've never used, and I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about it because I don't use it. You'll have to try to figure out a way to create those albums using that app on your phone. And maybe it's easy. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but you can do that. If you've used your DSLR, even in auto mode, just use Lightroom like we showed, like I just did here. Go ahead and create that Art 2265 folder, create all your assignments inside of that folder, and you can already be ready to go. With perspective, now what I want you to use is your DSLR, okay? Now, I still allow you to shoot in auto mode for perspective. So because I haven't really talked about anything about how to shoot yet, about like aperture, shutter speed, all that stuff. So with this second assignment perspective coming up, you can use auto mode, but you have to use a DSLR. No more phones. Phones are done after self-portrait, but auto mode is okay. Secondly, what is perspective? Okay, so originally it was called bird's eye, dog's eye, and it's still called that in photo one. I don't like that nomenclature, mainly because people were getting really literal with that, and they would take pictures of dog's eyes or pictures of birds. It doesn't mean high or low. Bird's eye, dog's eye also, what it technically was meaning was bird's eye is high, dog's eye is low. It doesn't mean really high or low either, even though a lot of the images are either high or low. What it is anything other than standard, oh, look, I have my camera and I'm going to take a picture of that thing, click, I'm done. Okay. What I want out of perspective is mystery. I want shots that aren't normally taken. If you're going to take a photo of, let's say this cup that's right here, don't just point the camera right at the cup and photograph it. Take a picture of the cup from straight down at the cup, or take a picture of the cup from underneath the cup. And I'm being very literal in saying this, like hopefully you don't just take pictures of cups. Hopefully you find better things to photograph, but that's okay. We'll see them. But the idea here is this: if you hand this camera to 99 out of 100 people and say, take a picture of this cup, what are they going to do? They're going to go, and they're just going to take a picture of the cup. There you go. I'm done. We don't want that. We're getting out. We're trying to get out of that trend of seeing. So in chapter 9 in the book, it talks about this. Okay. Chapter 9 in the book says seeing like a camera. Read through that. Read through seeing like a camera. it's ways of like, even in this image right here, right? Even in that, the guy playing the violin, it looks pretty standard, but that photographer is a little bit low and kind of pointing through the other people with the guitar, you know, the headstocks of the guitars. It's pointing through. So perspective means, and I'm going to show you some examples of it. Perspective, the assignment means looking at things in a non-standard way. Okay. Yeah, it can be high, yeah, it can be low. That's kind of the simplest of it, but it really means looking at things from below or the side, or trying to compose things in a way that's visually interesting. Does everybody know what rule of thirds is in this class? Have you heard rule of thirds? Rule of thirds is dividing your image into thirds and not putting your subject right in the center like I am right now in this Zoom meeting. Rule of thirds would be I'd be over here, you know, or a rule of thirds would be I'd be over here. And you know, that's not the greatest example, but use rule of thirds. Those videos that I have online on eLearn, if you go back and you look at perspective and you also look at composition that's in eLearn, there are videos there that talk about good composition and why it matters, leading lines. So let's now look at some examples of perspective from students in the past from this class, okay? I'm going to share screen and we'll be about finished, okay? There's one more thing I want to share on eLearn, but then we'll be finished. So I'm going to my profile, I'm going here, and then we're going to go to albums, and we're going to go to perspective, okay? And then starting right off out of the gate, you know, it's if you were sitting in, or 99, I'm going to use this example again, but 99 out of 100 people, if you gave them the camera and you're eating dinner with this young lady, would they take this photo? Probably not. They would take a photo of her face, because that's what we gravitate towards. But it's more of her hands and this plate, and so it's telling a little bit of a story. And there's also concept in this, which I'm not asking for in perspective, but the concept in this is you are the person eating a meal with this person and she's on her phone really not paying attention to you. So there's a little bit of a story in this too, which is great when you can do that with photography. Okay, but just from a perspective standpoint, this is a non-standard perspective. I know it's very subtle, but it is a non-standard perspective. And then this was one of my earlier ones, and some students have said, well, I really don't think this photo is all that good. Look at the table leg right in the middle. And I agree. It's not the greatest of images, but the idea is there again. The idea of I'm going to go under a table and photograph under a table, as opposed to what's on top of the table or just standing at it looking right at the table. Okay. It's an exercise in creativity. And the light coming in is decent and everything else. Is it the greatest photo? No, but it's a good example of perspective. And then here, looking between two trees to see another tree. Good example of perspective. Here we get down low as opposed to, and I'm going to stop share because I need to explain this, and I'll go back to that one, as opposed to seeing those things growing out of the ground and just photographing them right on the ground, standing up above it like a 5'8" human being or however tall we are. Click. That person got down and got under them and got part of the sky and everything else in the image. And I say this a lot. People love to photograph flowers. That's fine. Flowers are pretty. I get it. But 99% of flower photos are what? Someone standing over a flower going, click, okay, I got the flower. They put it right in the middle of the image. It's beautiful because it's a flower, but that's the flower doing that, not you as a photographer. You be a photographer and make that image even more beautiful and interesting by the way you compose it. So that's a big deal in photography. There's the difference between, you controlling the image or the image controlling you. So going back to this, and that's kind of what you have here, a photographer controlling the image as opposed to just walking up on it and shooting it from top to bottom, even with this nice little angled line up here in the corner. Again, this is just something hanging from a ceiling. It's not mind blowing. It's not that great, but it's compositionally, it's decent. It's got this rule. This third there's not a lot of information over here, but it's not right in the center. It's an okay perspective image. And this one's pretty good. I like this one. if you do this with trees, just don't do it 30 times. Like do this once or twice with trees and move on and do something different. I like variety. That doesn't mean you have to drive all over the city of Dayton to get variety, but I like variety in the images. So, I mean, you could be this same person. This tree could be in your backyard, and then you go to this one and get up on your deck and shoot down. And this is actually well composed. Is it the most exciting image? No, but it's well composed. A lot of this assignment is a study in composition, in lines, leading lines here, leading lines, good composition. If we're VisCom students, we should understand this, or at least be learning to understand this. Here's rule of thirds, looking down. This could have also been a self-portrait, but it's a perspective shot, and that's what she used it for, and that's great. It works for that. Um, Perspective, looking at stop sign. That's not how we normally look at stop signs. That's all it is, okay? It can be as mundane as you want it to be with stop signs, and it can be as dramatic as that's another one of trees, looking up into trees. That's fine. I would almost say this is kind of a standard perspective, but if you want to do this, you can. I just don't find it really that different. I thought the other tree photo was a little more, out there perspective wise. Here, a lot of students had a couple like, what's odd about this perspective? Well, it's just kind of low. It's lower than normal. You'd normally be standing up above that. And the light coming in the window would normally, most people would probably shoot the lit side of this, right? And instead it's more of the light and shadow of this. So it's a decent image for perspective. It's also one of the earlier ones I had. I started getting better, better selections as I went on. But it still works. It still works. Here we have just gravel against a fence, and the way it's composed is an odd perspective. It's higher up. This is, you could say it's bird's eye, I guess, but I don't really care about those terms. What I care about is that it's a different perspective than normal. And this one I think is very strong. And one of the things I always point out in this is, yes, it is centered, but there's a lot going on here. This line here, this shadow area creates a third. This shadow over here creates a third. And yes, this is centered, but even this little area here where there's open area right before it hits the bottom is good. This is a well thought out, well planned and composed image. Okay, so really this assignment could be called perspective or composition. Right third, good image, good composition. Bottom third here where the grass meets the wall. Right third where the legs meet the edge of the frame. Nothing is centered. Very good image. Very simple image, but a very good photographic image. And on and on. Leading lines here. This person had to get low and photograph this. The horizon line is not right in the middle. That's a big no-no in photography. You don't want to put the horizon line right in the center. It's just boring, for a lack of a better word. The horizon line should be at the top third or the bottom third or lower. In the bottom third, a lot of times you can put the horizon line right just on the edge, but you never really want it right in the middle. All right. Go through sometime, before I continue, go through sometime beach photos of people like that people take that aren't really thinking about it. 9 times out of 10, the people are right in the middle. The sunset, the horizon line's right in the middle, the person's right in the middle. It's really kind of straightforward. We want to get out of that habit. Here we just have shovels hanging in a shed, and yeah, it's not that exciting. A lot of photos you take aren't going to be exciting, and I'm expecting that, right? What I want to see is the composition being a little exciting. And maybe we're being a little facetious saying the composition is exciting, but it's a heck of a lot more exciting than if this person would have just walked in the shed and took a picture the way they see the shovels right when they walked in. At least they got lower than that and tried to frame it that way. So that's what I'm looking for. Even this, it's the ceiling of Target, but it's not who walks into a Target and takes a picture of the ceiling. And again, it's not about like, well, just do something weird. It's about seeing things from a different angle or seeing things that maybe most people don't look at or don't look in that way, right? So that's what we're looking for, right? And even this, just down below the grave, this one's a little bit more standard, but they shot through the grass a little bit and made it kind of, brushy in the foreground. So all these things are good. Every one of these photos I can tell took a little bit of effort. And what I mean by effort is I can tell that the photographer was looking through their camera when they were doing this and thought about it. Lower than, just good compositions. This is really could be one of the most creative assignments of the semester in here. They're all, you can be creative, but this one you can really get creative. This one I really like just because of this change of surface. This is a tennis court, but there are some things I don't like about this as well that I talk about. I don't like that they have this trash can in here. I wish they would have just moved over to the right just a little bit. Think of everything in your frame when you photograph. Think of everything. If that's in there, move. Get it out of there. I don't mind this building as much, but this is kind of bothersome. Also, this line, I think would have worked better had they moved over and just had the line coming this way a little bit and had the stone still there close up. But I love the stone and I love the shadow and I love the light and I love the color. The horizon line is sort of in the middle as well. But I like what this person was attempting to do here. Okay. And again, I can tell there's effort in this. I just wish they would have thought a little bit more about that. Things in the frame. This is one of the better ones I have. And I can't emphasize enough on this. Going to a kid's playground is one of the best. I'm not saying to do this all semester, but going to a kid's playground where they have these kind of things like this, you've got a lot of material to work with, just because of the way the bars are, the way the leading lines are, the swing sets, the climbing things, anything. You can find a lot at these kids' playgrounds to photograph. And I'm okay with that. I don't get tired of this. I get less tired of this than I do of like graveyards and trees, because there's so much going on in kids' playgrounds. There's still a lot of variety that I see every semester. Then this one is actually shot through photograph through this is another stop sign in front, and the stop signs have holes in the poles that they stand on. So he got really close up to a hole with his camera and photographed through the hole in the stop sign, and then photographed another stop sign. This is penultimately what I want out of this. If you had 10 photographs of this nature in your perspective, I mean, you'll easily get a 10 out of 10, because this is, to me, even this line here, right here, is rule of thirds. Everything about this is really well done. Same with this one, light flare, these kind of things. And honestly, this is very similar. Doing this is very similar to what this person did. Same idea, different setting, but looking through things, looking through items, looking through portals or whatever you want to call them. That's kind of what you're doing there with perspective, but that can always make for interesting images, looking through something. So think of that. And then here, just being in the back seat of a car, well composed, well shot. Again, children's playground, wet that day, whatever. He did this in winter as well. And honestly, the weather was kind of crummy and he had to deal with it. And he did. He took a lot of really good photos, closer up, get close to things, spider webs, look for things like this. This is what photography is all about. Photography is not about always making yourself look rich or pretty or handsome. Sometimes it's about, what do I see when I'm walking around? What is my eye? What am I drawn to? Good light in this. Yes, it's just the side of a dumpster, but this is what we're looking for. And this one, I've done this a lot. I'm okay with this. I put this in there. Use mirrors, use reflective surfaces if you want. Like going back to this one that we saw, it was a mirror, right? I know that one right there, right? Use mirrors. This is just somebody standing in a room shooting down on their feet with a mirror. Like, mirrors can do a lot of cool things with perspective as well. So if you know places where there's a mirror, you can use a mirror, but use it in a way that's photographic. This is a really nice image of just a 7-Up bottle compositionally, right? Lower third here, leading line here. This is just cropped off just right. Your eye is being led around this image. The problem with centering everything in an image, it just bores you, because you know exactly what you're supposed to look at, and it's telling you, yeah, just look right here. Don't look anywhere else. This image has flow to it. It has compositional flow to it. So that's what we're looking for. And this one doesn't as much, but it's still interesting because there's mystery to it. What is it? Why is it? That kind of thing. So those things are all good. Another one looking through holes, and you'll find this a lot at like kids' playgrounds. So that's what I'm looking for in perspective. And I want to say this, like I can tell what you're doing, even though I'm not there a lot of times. And this is one of the biggest pitfalls Photo One students have because they're so used to digital is they turn this camera on and I don't even have mine on. It will show it now, but yeah, it is. I usually turn this off when I'm shooting. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't want to look at this to be my way of making my photo. I'm going to put it up to my eye and use it this way. Because when I put it up to my eye, I am really connected to the image. I've got one eye closed, okay? I've got my outside eye closed and I've got my inside eye open, and I'm really looking at the image. I am making everything in that image matters. If there's a Pepsi can laying on the ground, I might go push it away. If there's a trash can in the frame, I might move my camera over just a little bit to get that trash can out of there. All those things are important. All those things are important. As a photographer, as an art photographer, you want to know what, like, everything in that image should matter. Obviously if there's an ant crawling through it and you can't see it, it doesn't matter. But and it's too small or your depth of field softens it up, that's fine. But if you have just a giant Pepsi can and you forgot about it, like that's kind of problematic. If you took a picture of me in this room right now with all this clutter, it's really chaotic. It would not be a good portrait. It just looks like some random snapshot of a guy in a room that he probably needs to clean up a little bit. Doesn't look good. So think about everything in your photo. Does anybody have any questions about that? What I'm looking for in perspective? I want art, I want composition. I want interesting images. I know a lot of you are taking this class because you have to, but at least you have to make an effort and try to compose your images well, right? And it's not always going to work, and that's okay. Let me think of anything else. I don't think, if you have any questions later on, one more thing I wanted to show you in eLearn, and then we're done, is Safari. Go here. I'm going to go to eLearn really quickly. What I'm going to have is this is going to be updated every week. And if you go to eLearn and you go to content, you have to get into your class first, and you go to content. Now, this might be hard to find at first, but course overview, top thing, right? Course overview, start here. If you go into weekly sessions, what I'm going to have, the only thing that's going to be for us is this should be via Zoom. Don't let that throw you off. Who cares? But what I'm going to have here is week 1. I've already got the first 3 weeks on. It tells you what I discussed. Week 2, brief camera history, basic camera functions. We already talked about that. Self-portrait will be due Friday, January 26th by midnight. Week 3, that's where we're at now. I say file management, Lightroom, perspective, and composition will be touched upon as well. Seeing like a camera. Self-portrait due Friday, January 26th. In-person lecture, just ignore that. I need to change that. I just copied and pasted and forgot. No big deal. We really are in person. We're just over a screen, but okay. And then perspective assignment will be assigned. So my whole point is, look at this if you get lost and you're not sure what's due. But every Tuesday I assign something, and then it's due the following Friday. So this Friday, what's due is what was assigned last Tuesday, which is self-portrait. And then next Friday, perspective will be due. All right. So 30 and 10, 30 and 10, 30 and 10, until we get to depth of field, which will be 4. And I'll make sure you know that. So anybody have any questions about any of that? I'm going to stop recording and just let you know this will be up on YouTube. I'm going to upload it here right as soon as I get done here.